This is another presentation by My Weight World.
Exercise. Specific exercise stretching exercises. The goal of this presentation is to teach you specific stretching exercises you can incorporate into your exercise routine to increase your normal ranges of joint motion. Stretching exercises include lower back stretches, lying buttock stretch, groin and inner thigh stretch, seated leg stretches, seated calf stretch, seated hamstring stretch, seated inner thigh stretch, psoas stretch, quadricep stretch, and the lying V stretch. Descriptions are also included for normal ranges of joint motion of the following parts of the body: the neck, lumbar, spine, shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip, knee, and ankle. Lower back stretches. Lying down with your back on the floor, straighten one leg while bending the knee of the other leg, and bring the thigh of your bent leg as close as possible to your chest. Hold it there for 10 to 15 seconds. Then cross your bent leg over your straight leg and touch your knee to the floor. Try to keep both shoulders on the ground while you do this. Repeat this same procedure with the other leg. Then bend both knees and bring both thighs up against your chest while keeping your back on the floor. Hold that for 10 to 15 seconds. Then place both feet on the ground while keeping your knees bent. While holding both shoulders to the ground, roll your legs over to one side and try to touch your knees to the floor beside you. Hold this position for 10 to 15 seconds and then repeat on the other side. Now repeat the same stretch, but this time begin with your feet off the floor with your leg bent and knee at about 90-degree angle. Lying buttock stretch. This mainly stretches your buttocks, gluteal muscles, but it also makes some demands on your groin and upper inner thigh area. You must be very careful not to apply any stress to the knee joint when performing this stretch, or serious injury such as the tearing of your cartilage could occur. Line your back again with both knees bent and with your feet on the floor. Take your right foot and your left hand, wrapping your hand under your foot so that your fingertips are around the outside edge, and hold your leg in the air with your knee bent, about 1 to 3 feet above your left breast. Relax. Exhale as you slowly pull your foot over to the side and up to your head, as if you were trying to touch your outstretched leg about a foot beyond your left shoulder. You should feel a good stretch in your buttocks about now. If you feel any stress at all in your knee, stop the exercise immediately. This means you're probably pulling up too much and not enough to the side. You may wish to use your free hand to support your knee in some way. Hold this stretch for about 20 seconds. And remember to stop if you feel any stress in the knee joint. Now repeat this same stretch with the other leg. Using the opposite hand, remember that the leg you are not holding should have the sole of your foot in the floor with the knee bent. Groin and inner thigh stretch. This exercise primarily stretches your groin and upper inner thigh area. Be very careful not to apply any stress to the knee during this stretch, or you could seriously injure yourself. Sit down with your back straight. To avoid slouching, you may want to sit with your back against a wall. Bend your legs, touching the soles of your feet together. Try to bend your knees so your heels are as close to you and your groin as is comfortably possible. Now that you are in the proper position, you are ready to stretch. For the passive stretch, push your knees to the floor as far as you can and hold them there. You may use your hands to assist, but do not resist with the knees. This can be very hard on the knees, so use caution and common sense. Once you have attained this position, keep your knees where they are, then bend over, exhaling as you do so, trying to place your chest as close to the floor as possible. Hold this stretch for about 20 seconds. The isometric stretch is almost identical to the passive stretch, but before you bend over, place your hands on your ankles and your elbows in the crooks of your knees. As you bend over, use your elbows to force your knees closer to the floor while at the same time pushing up away from the floor, with your thighs to resist against your arms. Once again, please be careful since this can considerably strain on the knees. Seated calf stretch. Sit down on the bench with one leg extended directly in front of you. Hang the other leg to the side with the knee bent and the foot flat on the ground. Face the outstretched leg and then bend it slightly. Place your hands around the ball of the foot on the leg you have outstretched in front of you and gently pull back on it so that you force as much of flex in your foot as possible. Hold this stretch for about 20 seconds. Remember to breathe. For the isometric version of the stretch, in the same position, use your hands to try to force the ball and toes of your foot even further back toward you, while at the same time using your calf muscles to try and straighten your foot and leg. You should be resisting enough with your hands so that neither your foot or leg actually moves. Seated hamstring stretch. Now that you've stretched your calves, you can get a more effective hamstring stretch, since inflexibility in the calf can limit the effectiveness of this hamstring stretch. Sit on the bench with your back straight and extend one leg directly in front of you. Hang the other leg to the side, with the knees bent and the soles of the foot flat on the floor. Face the outstretched leg and bend it slightly. Straighten this leg, while holding onto it with your hands on either side, stretching as close as possible to your heel. Slowly exhale, trying to bring your chest down to meet the knee of your outstretched leg. You should feel a significant stretch in your hamstring, and also a considerable stretch in your calf, even though you already stretched it. Hold this stretch for about 20 seconds, but remember to breathe. Seated inner thigh stretch. Sit on the bench with one leg outstretched in front of you and the other hanging to the side. Knee bent and foot on the floor. Now rotate your position on the bench so that your leg is stretched out to your side and you are facing the leg that is bent. You can either perform this next stretch with your toe pointing up toward the ceiling or with your inside edge of your foot flat on the bench with your toe pointing forward, but still flexed. You may also want to try this stretch both ways, since you will stretch some slightly different muscles either way. Place your hands underneath the bench directly under you and pull yourself down and forward, holding your back straight as if you were trying to touch your chest to the floor. You should be able to feel this stretch in your inner thigh. Hold this stretch for about 20 seconds and remember to breathe. Psoas stretch. This stretch is sometimes called the runner's start because the position of the stretch resembles a sprinter at the starting block. Its purpose is primarily to stretch the psoas muscles located just above the top of the thigh. Crouch down on the floor with both hands and knees on the ground. Extend one leg forward with your foot on the floor so that your front leg is bent at the knee at about a 90-degree angle. Now extend your rear leg and back of you so that it is almost completely straight, but with just the slightest bend. So the weight of your rear leg is on the ball of your rear foot with the foot in a forced arc position. You are now in position to stretch. Notice that your rear leg should be in pretty much the same position it would if you were performing a front split. Holding your back straight and aligned with your rear thigh, exhale and slowly try to bring your chest down toward the floor. You shouldn't need to bend much further than the line of your front knee. You should feel the stretch primarily in the upper thigh of your rear leg. But if you're doing it correctly, you should also feel some stretch in your front hamstring as well. Hold this position for at least 15 seconds. Now move the opposite leg to the front and repeat the stretch. Quadricep stretch. For this stretch, you will need a small pillow or soft cushion in place between your knee and the floor. You must be very careful when performing this stretch because it can be hard on the knees. Please advise to take it easy and not overdo things while performing this exercise. If you have problems with your knees, you may be better off not performing this stretch at all. Put the pillow under your rear knee, resting your knee on the floor. Lift your rear foot and grab your foot with the opposite hand. Grab the instep if possible, but if you can only reach the heel, that's okay. If you have trouble grabbing your foot, you may need to sit back on your rear leg so you can grab it, and then shift forward into the starting position with your hand now holding your foot. Now exhale and very gently but steadily pull your foot toward its buttock and lean toward your front foot. You may also wish to twist your waist and trunk toward the foot you are holding. You should feel a giant stretch in the quadriceps, top right of the thigh, of the foot that you are pulling. If you begin to feel stress in your knee, discontinue the exercise, but release your foot slowly, not all at once. Hold the stretch for about 15 seconds. When you are finished, slowly shift your weight back onto your rear leg and lower your foot while you are still holding onto it. Do not just release your leg and let your foot snap back to the ground. This can damage your knees. Switch legs and repeat the stretch on the other side. Lion V stretch. This exercise should be performed after you have performed each of the prior stretches individually. Start by lying down with your back flat on the ground and your legs straight together in air at a 90-degree angle. Try to turn your legs outward so that your knees are facing the side walls more than they are facing your head. Slowly bring your legs down to the sides, keeping them straight and turned out. When you reach the point where you cannot bring them down any further into this lying side split position, hold them there. Now for the stretch, with both feet flexed or both pointed, your choice. Use your arms to reach in and grab your legs. Each arm should grab the leg on the same side. Try to grasp the leg between the ankle and the knee, right at the beginning portion of the calf that is closest to the ankle is perfect. Now exhale and use your arms to gently but steadily force your legs further down and wider, keeping them straight and getting closer to the lying side split position, where ideally your kneecaps would be kissing the floor, holding this position, applying steady pressure with your arms for about 20 seconds. Normal ranges of joint motion. Here are some definitions you will need to understand the upcoming explanations of good ranges of motion exercises. Flexion, bending a joint or limb by the action of the flexors. Extension, straightening or extending a limb. Bending, creating a state of tension, assuming a stooped posture. Rotation, turning around a center axis in a complete cycle. Abduction, movement that draws a limb away from its axis. Adduction, movement that draws a limb toward its axis. Supination, turning the palm upward. Inversion of the foot. Pronation, rotation movement of the forearm or foot. Radial deviation, position of the human hand in which the wrist is bent toward the thumb. Ulnar deviation, position of the human hand in which the wrist is bent toward the end finger. Normal ranges of joint motion for the neck. Flexion. Recommended movement is 70 to 90 degrees. Attempt to touch the sternum with the chin. Extension. Recommended movement is 55 degrees. Attempt to point up with your chin. Lateral bending. Recommended movement is 35 degrees. Attempt to bring your ear close to your shoulder. Rotation. Recommended movement is 70 degrees left and right. Attempt to turn your head to the left and then to the right. Normal ranges of joint motion for the lumbar spine. Flexion. Recommended movement is 75 degrees. Bend forward at the waist. Extension. Recommended movement is 30 degrees. Bend backward at the waist. Lateral bending. Recommended movement is 35 degrees. Bend to each side at the waist. Normal ranges of joint motion for the shoulder. Abduction. Recommended movement is 180 degrees. Bring your arm up from your side with your palm facing down, sideways to the body. Adduction. Recommended movement is 45 degrees. Bring your arm down toward the side of your body. Horizontal flexion. Recommended movement is 130 degrees. Swing your arm horizontally forward as in a clapping motion with your arm straight in front of you. Horizontal extension. Recommended movement is 45 degrees. Return your arm from a clapping position to a resting position. Vertical extension. Recommended movement is 60 degrees. Raise your arm straight backward from having your hands at your side. Vertical flexion. Recommended movement is 180 degrees. Raise your arm straight forward to bring your hand in line with your shoulder joint. Normal ranges of joint motion for the elbow. Flexion. Recommended movement is 150 degrees. Bend your elbow, bringing your hand close to your shoulder joint. Extension. Recommended movement is 180 degrees. Straighten your elbow, moving your hand further away from the shoulder joint. Supination. Recommended movement is 90 degrees. Turn your lower arm so your palm facing up, as if you were trying to hold a bowl in the palm of your hand. Pronation. Recommended movement is 90 degrees. Turn your lower arm so your palm faces down. The exact opposite rotation in the supination. Normal ranges of joint motion for the wrist. Flexion. Recommended movement is 80 to 90 degrees. Bend your wrist to reach your palm closer to your lower arm. Extension. Recommended movement is 70 degrees. Bend your wrist away from your lower arm. Radial deviation. Recommended movement is 20 degrees. Bend your wrist toward your radius bone. Ulnar deviation. Recommended movement is 30 to 50 degrees. Bend your wrist toward your ulna bone. Normal ranges of joint motion for the hip. Flexion. Recommended movement is 110 to 130 degrees. Flex your knee, bringing your thigh close to your abdomen. Extension. Recommended movement is 30 degrees. Move your thigh backward without moving the pelvis. Abduction. Recommended movement is 45 to 50 degrees. Swing your thighs and leg away from the midline of your body. Adduction. Recommended movement is 20 to 30 degrees. Bring your thigh and leg toward the midline of your body. Internal rotation. Recommended movement is 40 degrees. Rotate your whole leg inward, twisting your thigh toward your body. External rotation. Recommended movement is 45 degrees. Rotate your whole leg outward, twisting your thigh away from your body. Normal ranges of joint motion for the knee. Flexion. Recommended movement is 130 degrees. Touch your calf to your hamstrings, bending your knee backward and moving the calf in the direction of the hamstrings. Extension. Recommended movement is 15 degrees. Straighten your knee as much as possible, moving your leg back and kicking it forward from a flexed position. Internal rotation. Recommended movement is 10 degrees. Twist your lower leg toward the midline of your body. Normal ranges of joint motion for the ankle. Flexion. Recommended movement is 45 degrees. Bend your ankle so your toes point up, bringing your toes closer to your ankle. Extension. Recommended movement is 20 degrees. Bend your ankle so your toes point downward. Pronation. Recommended movement is 30 degrees. Turn your foot so the sole faces in. Supination. Recommended movement is 20 degrees. Turn your foot so the sole faces out. In summary, you should now be familiar with 10 basic stretching exercises: the lower back stretch, the lying buttock stretch, the groin and inner thigh stretch, seated leg stretches, seated calf stretches, seated hamstring stretches, seated inner thigh stretches, the psoas stretch, the quadriceps stretch, and the lying V stretch. All of the seated stretches begin from the same basic position. You have also learned definition of words relating to normal range of motion, such as extension and flexion, abduction and adduction, supination and pronation. And you should also be familiar with the normal range of motion for all of the body's major joints: the neck, lumbar spine, shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip, knee, and ankle. Stretching these joints regularly will give you enhanced flexibility and ease of movement.
This has been another presentation by My Weight World.